So we are in step 11. And as part of step 11, what I've been doing is offering a variety of different meditations, because ordinarily I just lead a kind of standard mindfulness meditation. And so I looked at my list today, and this is the one I want to do a standing meditation, not for the whole 20 minutes, but for a few minutes. So if you are able, and if you're in a place where it's, you know, you can easily do that, I'm going to ask you to stand up. And I'm going to stand up, which means I'm going to have to tip my screen back, I presume. Or whatever adjustments you have to make. No, it's like you're looking at this monster. Oh. No, this is very simple. There's nothing to standing meditation except standing. And it's one of the traditional 4 postures: sitting, walking, lying down, and standing. And some people who are Qigong practitioners immediately start doing Qigong. We're doing this is standing meditation. So, but you can do what you want to do, see as you see fit. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm a little further from the microphone. I'll try to raise my voice a little. So close your eyes and start by just feeling your feet on the ground, on the floor, on the earth. Just feeling the soles of your feet connecting. And feel the sensations there. So can you feel the weight of your body all resting there? And you feel a temperature. Is it warm or cool? Is there any tingling or any other sensations? Either pleasant or unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So as you're standing, notice if your body rocks a little bit, especially with your eyes closed. We see that because humans stand on 2 legs, we often have to work with our balance. It's not so easy to stay balanced on 2 legs. And now start to bring your attention, move your attention up from your feet, up into your legs. Your knees should be unlocked, so soft. And notice the engagement of muscles in the legs to hold you upright. Let the belly be soft. The chest open. Feeling the arms hanging at the sides. Is there energy or sensations in the hands? Explore that. In the shoulders, the back, the neck. We're just scanning, just feeling. And up into the head, the face, the eyes, the jaw. The nose, and your top of your head. And now just feeling your whole body standing. What sensations draw your attention? What parts of the body call to you, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? You can feel the breath. Just standing. It's a particularly good posture for doing a body scan because the body is at its longest position. When we sit, things are more compressed. And this is a good posture to do that kind of scan from bottom to top or top to bottom. And this then becomes something we can apply, particularly in our daily lives. When we're standing and waiting, or if we've been working, sitting down for a long time, we want to just stretch a little bit and then just practice a moment of mindfulness. I'm realizing now that I didn't suggest, and I didn't myself, to try to be mindful when I was standing up. But I'm going to suggest that you sit down, but sit down very slowly and mindfully so that we can continue to meditate in a seated posture. So just first, before you even move, hold on, sorry. Notice the impulse to move. And then notice what parts of your body have to engage first. And then slowly, very slowly, crouching down or moving to whatever side. And maybe you have to move your chair or seat. See what's involved in sitting down. We discover that these simple and very routine movements actually require quite a lot of complex engagement in the body. Very interesting to actually engage them and explore them. So now just coming back into a nice, comfortable, seated meditation posture. When we're on retreat, we try to maintain this kind of continuous mindfulness, moving between different postures, different activities. And in our daily lives, if we start to apply these principles, we can have a lot more moments of mindfulness in our day. So as you settle into your posture, just relaxing, sitting upright, eyes closed or just lowered gaze. Feel how it feels now to be sitting instead of standing. Just letting the body settle, relax. letting the energy settle. Then bringing the attention to the breath. Feel the breath at the nostrils or the belly, wherever sensations of breath appear in the body. So in the beginning of a sitting, you pretty quickly get some feedback as to how calm or agitated we are. You might sit down and find that a stream of thoughts or anxiety just immediately pops up. So we make that effort to come back, to connect with the breath. Other times we might find that there's actually a nice background calm already there that we can tap into. So we just engage that. So this points to the relative nature of right effort. You need to just observe what's going on and then apply appropriate effort. If there's a lot of energy in thinking, we have to be a little bit more structured, a little bit more intentional in our practice. If, though, we're able to settle a bit, then you don't have to be so form-oriented, so structured. We can more sit with a kind of openness and ease. And the mind might still wander, still will take a certain amount of effort not to drift off. In the course of a period of meditation, we may go from restless to calm, or from calm to restless. So our effort too tracks these changes. We adjust our effort, the changing conditions of mind and body. That's my travel bell. And actually, that reminds me that one of the little things I taught on the retreat was suggested to people that they not move as soon as they hear the bell at the end of a meditation, that they in fact take time and listen to the bell. And also just, and it's partly to just be mindful of the bell, but it's also to sort of not, to interrupt your reactivity. It's like, oh, it's over. Okay, now I'm moving. It's like, no, like be more intentional, right? Like, oh, okay, sitting is over. I'm listening. Okay, I can feel the impulse. It's so great. It's so helpful to start to feel the impulse to do something like move before you do it, so that there's more intentionality behind it. And one of the things that I enjoyed about this retreat was that as soon as I taught that, everybody did it. And people don't always respond like that. Here we have another of the retreat members, Bernadette. Nice to see you. One of the regulars on Zoom who came to the retreat. So so sweet. And Jasmine, hey, hi. I don't always call people out, but can't help myself. So yeah. So we're in step 11, and I was surprised to discover when I said, well, what's the next thing to do in my book, One Breath at a Time? And the next section is the Lord's Prayer, which was actually something that I mentioned yesterday at the end of the retreat when we were talking about the problem of like being a Buddhist or whatever, being interested in Buddhism and going to like 12-step meetings where you can't talk about Buddhism. And I was saying how, if you mention the Buddha, people will be like, you're not, that's a different religion. You're not allowed to talk about religion here. And then they all get up and say the Lord's Prayer. And you're like, wait, isn't that anyway? So just as a side note, the original edition of this book, One Breath at a Time, made a mistake in formatting, so that the section on the Lord's Prayer, if you have like the very first edition, which was probably out for at least 5 years or more, the Lord's Prayer section ends a paragraph early. The last paragraph shows up like 5 pages later in the book. There's a meditation instruction, I think, that's there. Yeah, the mudita karuna instruction, they put it in. And so anyway, if you have that edition, you might find it confusing. So like, what's this paragraph that seems so disconnected? In any case, I think what I'm going to do is just go through the Lord's Prayer and read this commentary that I wrote in the book. Our Father who art in heaven. For me, this is addressing my highest self, the place in me that is wise, patient, peaceful, loving, and compassionate. Heaven. So I'm beginning the prayer by calling on my best qualities. Yeah. Hallowed be thy name. If I'm not praying to something outside myself, then I'm just showing appreciation for my higher self here, reminding myself what is important and what I value. There's a sense of humility being evoked here too, which Bill Wilson says is the foundation principle of the steps. At least they were for Bill. We understand that. I'm not sure they are for everybody. Important, but anyway, extra commentary. I often rebel against this kind of praise of God, but oddly enough, I've found very similar language in Buddhist chants. Homage to him, the Holy One, the Pure One, the fully enlightened one. In the suttas, they'll call the Buddha Lord, so it's like very similar, right? And I will also say that we can see connection here to taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Our Father who art in heaven kind of, to me, is really almost speaking to about the Dharma. If Dharma is God, as the subtitle of my book implies, Dharma, God, and the Path of Recovery, then I also could be sort of speaking to and trying to engage Dharma. Okay, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Here, as I say the prayer, I imagine my highest wisdom coming down into the nitty-gritty details of my life, down to earth with the kingdom of heaven. That is the place of purity and wisdom in me, becoming manifest through thought, word, and deed. Thy will refers to right intention, acting from the desire to be of service to all beings. So yeah, why not? The problem, I think that, to me, the biggest problem with the prayer and with the God language is this identifying a being that we're praying to, rather than thinking of it in terms of connecting with something and recognizing something. Some truths, like the next thing, give us this day our daily bread. I understand this as an appreciation of interdependence, recognizing that the whole universe is supporting my existence. The atmosphere for air, the earth for food and water, and everything else that allows me to live in this moment. In that sense, it's a recognition of powerlessness. If not for the bounty of the universe, I wouldn't even be alive. Ooh, interesting comment. Give us this day our daily bread. Yeah, again, I think the idea of interdependence here, that so it does go back to humility. It's like I don't raise food, I mean, in very practical terms. I mean, and I don't build computers or print out books, and there's all these things that I'm dependent upon the universe or other beings for. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Obviously, this echoes the golden rule, treating others as we would like to be treated. The recognition of our imperfection is vital to accepting the imperfection of others. And for a meditator, the moment-to-moment forgiveness as we fall off the meditation object into wandering thoughts is vital to settling in, to allowing the process to unfold naturally. If we are judging, not forgiving, ourselves each time we space out or forget to pay attention, we only create more suffering. So we set our intention here to be kind and accepting of ourselves and our failures. It's interesting to me, and when I read this morning in preparation, it's interesting to me that I immediately kind of go to like forgiving myself for my bad meditation kind of thing. But it seems like it obviously, like, wait, but isn't there like this thing called amends? And like, aren't there a lot of bigger things I should be worried about forgiving myself for? But somehow, sometimes when you're writing a book, you get focused on certain things and you forget other things. So that's why I have to write a lot of books. But I think that is clearly, it sounds like the amends step of the prayer, and in so many ways, just like such a critical kind of heart of the prayer. Forgive us our trespasses, just self-compassion. May I forgive myself, and forgiving others, and just how vital that is to to having harmony in our lives. Our judgments and our anger and in small and large ways. That's one of those judgments, and that anger. Those are some of the most painful things that we carry with ourselves. And so remembering to just be forgiving. Greg gave just a beautiful Dharma talk on patience the other night that I wish we'd been able to record. I'm sure he'll give it again, but it really kind of set the tone for a lot of things on the retreat, or towards the end of the retreat. But and even as he and I, we got a ride to the airport yesterday. It was a long drive to Charlotte from the mountains, and and the idea of patience kept coming up. It was, how those, like a little Dharma theme, sort of took hold, and we kept noticing all the moments of impatience, and then reminding ourselves to be patient. So, okay, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For an addict or alcoholic, these words are important and point to something real. In practical terms, we need to avoid situations and people that might trigger relapse. You don't hang out in bars, if you don't have business there, and you don't drop by your drug dealer's house for a social call. In Buddhist terms, this is the aspect of right effort called prevention, also called, avoidance, where we try to keep negative thoughts or emotions from even appearing. The Buddha, knowing the tendency of the mind to veer into desire and aversion, encouraged quite strong effort to counter these destructive habits. So although I resist the biblical language of temptation and evil, the meaning beneath the words is relevant if you can just let go of the judgment. Yeah, I mean, this is where the kind of language gets very heavy. And yet, evil, yeah, it's definitely problematic. But I don't think temptation is a particularly inaccurate word to use when we think about, being exposed. Like, I'll tell you, the only time, I think this is true, so I'll say it. The only time that I remember having an impulse, an actual kind of unimpeded impulse to drink in my 36 years of sobriety was when I was in Ireland with my wife and daughter. God, it was 2015. Jeez. It was just yesterday. And we would eat in pubs every night because that's where you had dinner. It's just like and the last night we were there, we were actually just in a restaurant, but it was, in a hotel, but it was a pub, in the restaurant because it's Ireland. And, having a Guinness just seemed like a perfectly natural thing. It didn't seem like drinking, really. It didn't. That's the thing. It didn't seem like drinking. It just seemed like, dinner, kind of part of dinner. And I was like, oh, wow. I don't think I could live here. But I could, I might. But definitely it was temptation. It was like that temptation being there over and over and over, being exposed to it. If I hadn't been in those pubs night after night, that never would have occurred to me. So the last, and I will say here now that I was raised Catholic. So this is the end of the prayer for me. For Protestants, there's the extra part, which you guys are going to have to solve for yourself, because the extra part is where thine is the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We just go, lead us not into temptation, to deliver us from evil. Amen. So I don't know why that is, but and so the last paragraph here says, I'm no theologian, and I don't mean this as a definitive interpretation of the Lord's Prayer by any means. However, it's important to me to understand the prayer for myself. We can find the wisdom in these traditional prayers if we are ready to make them our own. And it's interesting that I did that, and there's no piece about the serenity prayer in this book. I don't think, I'm not sure. I don't remember there being. I think there are references to it, but it's interesting that I chose to do that whole piece, but it really, in some ways, points to a key element of what for me, blending Buddhism and the 12 steps, and that is starting with non-resistance. letting go of the aversions, letting go of the negativity about the steps and all the God stuff particularly, and saying, how can I make the most out of this? What's the real meaning of it? I think I left my phone on buzz. Somebody's actually calling me, which is not supposed to happen in the modern world. People are only supposed to text. And so it's important to me to say, okay, is there some wisdom in this prayer? And can I find it? And am I willing to look? Am I willing to let go of my, I'm ex-Catholic and I don't like all that stuff, and I'm an atheist or whatever. Am I willing to just say, is there something valuable here? And I do think there's something valuable. So, and there are times when I'm in a meeting and people say there's prayer, and I have this choice in that moment, am I just going to stand there and be pissed, or be like, I'm just a Buddhist, I'm in emptiness or whatever, or am I going to see if I can engage it, but and take it in a positive way and use it for myself? But that's my goal in that. So I hope it's helpful, and I understand that it won't be the right thing for everybody, but there you are. So I'll leave it at that for now and see if there are any thoughts or questions that anyone wanted to bring up. Cam, hi. Still
Hello?
muted. There you go. There
Hello?
you go.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back, Kevin.
Thank you.
I missed you, and although Debbie did a great job as well as Walt, it was really good.
Yeah.
It was nice to see and hear about the retreat. And I really have the way that the Buddhist world has helped me to approach prayer has helped me so much. And where I point to it is with the Brahma Viharas, in that I'm not supplicating a deity to bestow these qualities on me, but I'm generating them just as as a desire to develop loving kindness and compassion, sympathetic joy and equanimity, and to just build those things, but with the connection to the divine. And so the Buddhist world has helped me, and that's something. So I appreciate that approach with the Lord's Prayer. And with what I do notice, though, is the opposite of what you noticed with AA meetings. That when people mention Buddhism in AA meetings, what I see is it's very admired, and it's very trendy. Buddhism is so trendy, and yoga, and there's this whole lifestyle of just bliss, and I meditate. And so what I see is the opposite, is where if somebody says Jesus, and I worship, I worship the Lord, and I'm Christian, and this is a process of repentance for me, that's rejected in AA. And I think it's a reflection of society as a whole, that there's a societal rejection of Christianity. I think that's what I see going on. And then it's reflected in AA. AA is like a cross section of society. And so we're seeing patterns, social patterns in society reflected in AA. That's what I see.
That's really interesting. And I think it points to the fact that, my reference points are, when I went to a lot of meetings is not now. That's a weird sentence. I don't go to a lot of meetings. In fact, these days, the only meetings I go to are when somebody invites me to speak at a meeting. I hate to admit it, but maybe we better delete that part. But But yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, and I guess it also depends on where you are, you know, in the world, what the local culture is. I mean, because certainly in Berkeley, there are very few people who say the Lord's Prayer, and it rarely comes up at the end of a meeting, and rarely has since I've been there. But other places I've gone, it's been quite the thing. So interesting. But I'm glad to hear that Buddhism is trendy because, you know, I always want to be cutting edge, even if I've been around for a while. I think, Lynn, you had your hand up next.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize I was unmuted. This is from a couple of weeks ago, if that's okay, but it keeps staying with me, and I tried to find more about it and I couldn't. As I remember, it was if you still have cravings that you're not recovered. That's what I remember. And I just...
Where did you hear that?
You said it.
No, come on.
Oh, then maybe I remembered wrong. So I was going, well, I
didn't
still
say
have
that.
Cravings, and do they have to like never... Our urges is what you said. Is as I would you say if you don't have urges, you're not recovered?
You know, things come out of my mouth sometimes that maybe I don't think through entirely. So it's one of my failings, my character defects. You know, what I sometimes say is that yeah, I could have said something sort of like that. Like, I don't know if I put it that way, it was not skillful. You know, for me, the desire to drink was basically removed. So I sort of think of that as, but I know it's not true for everybody. I mean, I have a really good friend who's been sober a year longer than me, and she still struggles with craving and goes to a lot of meetings. And so I think it's very, very individual, very personal. And I certainly wouldn't want to put a judgment on somebody to say they're not recovered. I would say, I'm sorry, because it sounds really horrible to have to live for years and years with a strong craving. I mean, you know, when I smell marijuana, it smells good to me because that was my sort of my drug of choice. So, but I don't think of it. So I don't. It sounds like you have some cravings that you're...
I would say I don't have long recovery, and I substitute with addictions, I would believe. So I'm trying to work with not living with addictions. And I do have urges, and the intensity varies. And that's where a lot of resistance comes in for me, that when I do have a strong urge, it's like anger and intense frustration. And so I just was wanting, I thought, oh, so eventually just do the urges go away and there's more peace. But it sounds like that, I think I interpreted what you said possibly not as accurately. So I'm thankful to hear that.
Yeah.
It varies.
I'm glad you brought it up, and I so hope that anybody will bring something up that they find troubling that I say. Yeah, I do think that for many, if maybe most people who have longer term sobriety, 5-10 years, that much of the problem of craving, you know, is gone or is, you know, pretty rare. How long have you been? Are you sober from alcohol or
currently alcohol? Yeah. I keep going back and forth. So really just about 13 days. So it's not...
okay, right. Well, that's...
But I had other addictions.
I'm definitely not talking about 13 days when I say something like that. You know, more like 13 years. But I mean, maybe you know, less than 13 years. But I mean, certainly, you know, you've got to expect that. You know, that's totally normal. Yeah.
And I think it's just news, because usually I would satisfy the urge very quickly. So I didn't really have to feel the unpleasantness of the urge. And I think that's what I'm dancing with. And I thought, well, maybe I'm missing something. And why I tried to Google a lot, like, whoa, what does it mean to not have any urges? So it's helped to talk about it.
That's a really good point too, Lynn, that it just fell off. I made the mistake of looking over and seeing something in the chat, and I didn't mean to do that. And that's what happens to the brain. This is another reason why being present with people is a lot more effective. I lost it. It'll come back though, because it's right on the tip of my brain, but it's not coming back right now. So
really was just related to not feeling sensations when I responded immediately to the urge. So it's a new experience.
Oh, right. Thank you. Good. So I think it's a really good point that when you're not responding to the urges, then they hang out longer. And I never really put it in quite those terms before. So it seems that you're having more craving, but it's just because you're acting on it and having temporarily subsiding the craving. So that makes perfect sense. So yeah, I guess that explains why it's really hard to get sober, because the craving keeps going and going without, and finally, you have to break. It's like a fever and it has to break. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very helpful for me.
Well, and keep coming back. And I mean that sincerely, not just as a cliche, Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. So Jim, hey.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank
you. I'll second Cameron's endorsement of Debbie's leading the group last week. I didn't get to hear Walt, but Debbie led a really beautiful meditation. So really appreciated that.
Hey, Debbie. Thank you, Deb. Yeah. I mean, I don't like to admit that other people have wisdom, but
It all comes from you, Kevin.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's better. Thanks, Jim. That's the way to soothe my.
You're the source.
My sensitive ego.
So just real quickly, I wanted to say something to Lynn, that one of the factors of enlightenment or in Buddhism is investigation. And I think with cravings that can be applied in a couple of ways. One is just to notice how long the craving actually lasts if we don't add on to it, if we don't feed it, that cravings come and go and they have a length of time. And then also maybe just also investigating what's underneath the craving. Like, is there some emotion that I don't want to feel, or is there something going on? Generally, I mean, I think cravings can just come out of nowhere, but often they are related to difficult emotions, I would say. So, but I also wanted to say thank you so much for this topic today. And I also wanted to say to Cameron, if you are missing Christianity in Buddha in 12-step, come down to Olympia and come to some meetings down here, because it's pretty fundamentalist. And there's a lot of, our Father and my Creator and things like that. And I have a reaction to that. And I was actually writing about it this morning. It's kind of funny how, that thing about you hear what you need to hear.
Yeah.
I do this process called two-way prayer. And I was writing about the very question of my Creator, and what does that mean? And what I was sort of guided towards is just like, this is all a mystery, and don't try to figure it out. Don't try to understand it. People have different names for the divine, or for love, or for whatever it is. But yeah, I get caught up in looking for the differences rather than the similarities. And that was something I learned early in recovery, was look for the similarities.
Yeah.
But I forget that when Christianity comes up. Yeah. So I really appreciated this. I'm going to read this again, and I think it's so helpful. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. That's all so helpful, and just I really appreciate you bringing out the factors of awakening. I think you might find it interesting that Buddhadasa, when he goes through this thing about God and like trying to like connect like different aspects of traditional like Christian God with Buddhism, he says that the corollary to the creator God is, can you guess? It's cruel to say that. What?
Sorry, I was just joking. Delusion. But
that's it. No, that's it. He says ignorance, which is the same thing. He says ignorance is the creator, because it's when you look at the dependent origination starts with ignorance. So he's saying that the thing that sets in samsara in motion, right? The thing that sets our, life cycle, the creation of self in motion, is believing, is wrong view, ignorance, believing that, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to get born. I'm going to have experiences. I'm going to be happy. It's going to be satisfying and joyful. I'm never going to die. I'm going to, all the ignorance. And so, yeah, it's so because like what? Because it doesn't have anything to do with like, the Big Bang or, planets or anything. It just has to do with, the creation of self and suffering. Yeah. I'm not, so it's in a way, it's answering a different question than the Christians are trying to answer.
Yeah, I don't think that's what Christians are referring to when they talk about my creator.
I know. So, all right. I'm going to keep going today because, since I've been on vacation, my daughter, like, when she texted me like something about coming back from your vacation, and then she was like, star retreat, like anyway. Gail, hi.
Hi everyone. I'll try to make this brief because I see lots of hands here. I like to think I'm making progress in where did you go? Progress in my Buddhist practice. Yet when the Lord's Prayer comes out, that ability to let go is gone. I have such a reaction to it, having grown up Catholic myself. Yeah. And it's the one resentment that I have not been able to release. And, there's only one good thing in my mind that comes out of this. And that is I get to actually feel my heart start to race. I can actually feel, all of that tension and all of that. It's like a rage almost. And I first got sober in Southern California, and I don't ever remember it, saying the Lord's Prayer. And in Seattle, I don't remember it. Maybe it was said, but I'm sure if it was, I would remember. And then I moved up here. I'm a little bit north of Ole, Washington. It's my first time ever in a semi-rural area. It's a small town. And it's a Lord's Prayer county. And so I have found the few meetings that don't say it, but it's because I'm attracted to the kinds of people who don't have all that religiosity that, that the I call them Lord's Prayer meetings. Mm-hmm. I actually call them that. So I'd like to think that I'm making progress, but there is that resentment that, I'll just say it real briefly. I am still mad and sad, probably more sad, that my mother was not able to live long enough to see me as a lesbian get married, and had to die believing that there was something evil about me. So that is a resentment. You can almost hear it in my voice, in my tears. And I think it's a grief, it's a sadness that, and the other good news about it is, I don't know if I came to Buddhism or I ran from Christianity. And perhaps it makes no difference because I'm here and I have found a path that works for me. Thank goodness. And thank you. Although I do have to admit, I read this book a long time ago, and there's highlighting everywhere. I love to highlight, and then I handwrite out what I highlight in books, in notebooks. And this section, I'm not even sure I read it. There's not a single highlighting in
Just
it.
a big X across it.
I have that in my big book, a couple of pages. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out because I have a question. Are you endorsing or sanctioning the Lord's Prayer at the end of a meeting? How do you feel about that?
No, I think it breaks the what is said in the, I think it's in the preamble where it says we're not affiliated with any sect denomination. I believe that it breaks. It's not the traditions exactly, but it's in the preamble in AA. So I believe it's essentially breaking. It's hypocritical in terms of what the texts say. Yeah, that's my feeling about it personally. But AA doesn't care what I think.
Thanks for saying that, because when it says sex, denomination, or institution, it does not say religion.
No, it doesn't.
And denominations are essentially how Catholics, or how Christianity is broken up.
Exactly.
And they have sects, they have denominations, and it doesn't say religion.
Right, because the implication is, well, we're all Christians now. So now, but it's okay to all different Christians are welcome at these meetings, is what it's saying. It's I mean, then they have a chapter called We Agnostics, in which they try to convince you that, because there's electricity, obviously there's a God. So what? I'm always like, but it's like the most unconvincing logic I've ever seen. No, Gail, I don't endorse the Lord's Prayer, but I don't want to fight with it like you do. I mean, I think that's painful, and but I mean, if that's your biggest resentment, you're doing great. Thank you, dear. It's nice to see you.
I'll just say it. I think it's my only resentment left, which I'm very happy to be able to say. And had you not brought up the Lord's Prayer, I probably wouldn't have a resentment today. I say that in jest.
Right.
I know how to let it go now.
Yes. Beautiful. Thanks. All right. Let's keep going here. I love that people want to talk. Jasmine, hi. How are you surviving your transition?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's challenging and wonderful.
You have kids, don't you?
My youngest is 16.
Oh, okay. That's not kids. Those are just
no, they're not babies.
Irritations.
Oh, okay. Irritation. I'm trying to be patient.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see them all over the place, and I'm the one who's saying, "Wait a minute, and come back and be present." Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's been interesting. So, but no complaints.
Good.
This was perfect for me, reading this right now. As soon as we got back, my sponsee, had texted me a bunch of texts, and she's new with me. She's been in the program, must be her fourth sponsor, I think. And I'm in the South, and we do hear the Lord's Prayer, and I am one of the few practicing, a different style, maybe you would say, in the rooms. So while I have learned to let go of the judgments when I hear things, or to use them, for me, I struggle. Sometimes she sent me something and it instantly triggered me and hit me. It's the black and white. It's the he's going to save you.
Yeah.
And again, she's, I'm her fourth sponsor and trying to bring her something new. And I just I was trying to figure out how am I going to help this person? What can I offer her if she holds so tightly to some of these concepts? And then listening to everybody so far, the shares it's just been amazing, because it was what I needed to hear. Knowing that I don't have these, I can let go of these feelings, but trying to find that bridge. And it's not my work, it's her work, but I want to be able to support as best as I can. So to bring her concepts that she's asking for, we're about to start working your workbook. And I don't, what's that going to look like? So it's a new thing for me. So anyway, I don't know if you had anything to say. I mean, it's not, I guess I'm just sharing more than it was something, it hit me as soon as I got back. And then here we are talking about the Lord's Prayer, and it was very relevant to me. So anyway.
Well, first of all, I think there are a lot of things in the workbook that just have to do with recovery, and that can, even some of them that are like so-called Buddhist, like the hindrances or something, that aren't really Buddhist. They desire and aversion, sleepiness, restlessness, doubt. There's nothing like religious about really, and mindfulness. All of those things are things that are applicable and useful for people, whatever their beliefs. And I also think that, faith in Jesus as a model, and for the principles of what I believe the fundamental principles of Christianity: love, compassion, forgiveness, community. I mean, it's all good, it's just human beings screw it up. I mean, believe me, there are Buddhists who screw things up. In Burma, there are Burmese monks that help them attack the Muslims. So being a Buddhist doesn't make you a good person. It's all about how you manifest it. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're using this sort of, the modern evangelical movement is really ahistorical in terms of actual Christian tradition, and it doesn't really make any sense, when sort of connected with fundamental Christian principles. So that if you're running into someone like that who's caught up in that delusion, then it's really going to be difficult. But because there are, people who think, well, if you meditate, you're letting the devil in your mind. And I go, well, if you want the hindrances, you're going to call them the devil. I mean, Mara, whatever. But I think that's just, if she's, a sincere person who's trying to live by Christian principles and wants to get clean and sober, then I don't think there has to be a conflict. It's just, praying to Jesus or not praying to Jesus, sort of thing. And Jesus as a principle, the Christ principle, is very powerful, and connecting with that, it's almost like energetic. I mean, it is to me energetic, and that's can be very powerful as well, and very positive. Yeah, thanks. Monica.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for bringing kind of dissecting the Lord's Prayer, and some stuff have come up for me. But I'm so glad to see everybody. I've been on an epic road trip of 4,000 miles. So I'm home.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be back. So it was cool. It was all the way up to the Olympic Peninsula, down to the California Redwoods, and we're back. I didn't realize to this moment that I freeze up a little bit with the Lord's Prayer. So my transformation from Catholicism to Buddhism is complete, I guess. But
yeah.
if I was, I'm in the middle of Colorado, and they're also, if you were to start saying, well, I don't think we should say the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting, they get out the pitchforks, Mm-hmm. So I was just thinking about, everybody has a story about when they met Kevin, and one of my first time I met you, was you had to take what you need and leave the rest. And it's that, and that's what I've been practicing, because I can't. I just can't. There's nothing to be said, and I can't. It takes the recovery groups years to change a semicolon. So how are they going to change? Make any of those changes? I think they acknowledge sometimes, not always, that this is a problem for all religious groups, but I'm glad I was really enjoyed the commentary, and I learned a few things even about myself, about craving. I've been doing, and funny enough, you said 13 years, I have 13 years, but one thing I wanted to say about craving is I really didn't understand, and I'm drug-free, alcohol-free, but I didn't understand craving till I quit sugar. And that was 6 years ago, I think. 7 years ago now, I can't remember. And that's when I finally understood the craving. And it took a while. Oh. So if anybody's struggling with craving, and when I smell pot, I gotta turn my mind off. That ego wants to, or I can smell alcohol like from 300 yards. So, you just have to, I just don't let my ego engage. I just don't, walk off, it's still going to happen, but it's not like it used to be, so, but thank you again. And thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Watch out for those pitchforks.
Yeah.
Anne Peruzzi, AKA Folger.
AKA. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, this is great. Well, first, you know what? When Monica mentioned the sugar, I didn't really truly, realize it and knew what craving really was until I quit sugar cold turkey. I still pretty much have stopped the way certainly I used to. My relationship with sugar was quite indulgent. Anyway, so I really had to do a lot of looking, and I had a lot more wisdom, so I could really look at what's beneath this craving. What is this empty hole? What is this churning in my gut? What is it saying? So anyway, there's that. But this idea of really like we're praying to something, which the Lord's Prayer can sort of bring up.
Indeed.
And what I've learned with studying Buddhism and reading your books and listening to you, and for me, my relationship really is connecting with and not, praying to. It's really about this learning how to connect with and really feel it within me. And when I'm practicing the Brahma Viharas, this also came up. That's when I really feel like it is coming through me and me, and then I say me, and I am that and all that. I don't mean that, but there's a sense, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But it is connecting with, and there's a phrase that I have on one of my bookshelves upstairs. We're taught, and I don't know where it came from, but it says we're taught how to do prayer and not taught how to be prayer. And that often comes up for me. So thanks. So helpful to have the view of the Lord's Prayer like this, because it is so fraught with projection, and if you take it like this, if you take it like the suttas, where this language is just like so confusing, and what are they talking about? I just settle back and just let it flow through me, and what does it mean to me? It's a lot easier to be with, not resist so much. So
nice.
So thank you for that today.
Yeah. And I kind of, you reminded me too of what Cam said about the, kind of more or less about cultivating like something from within you, bring something out of yourself rather than trying to get something into yourself. And I'm not sure how he said it because it was very well said. Might have to get him to write that down for us. Yeah. Julia Shaw, hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. And wow, what a fantastic group and meeting. And I just wanted to share when I was early in sobriety counting days. It might have been like, it was one of the first meetings that I had attended voluntarily. And I'll never forget, like the whole meeting didn't make sense to me. And I was an atheist. I was born Muslim. And I grew up, my dad was very open-minded. So when Jehovah's Witnesses came to our door when I was a child, he invited them in and bought the books or whatever. And so he was really open-minded and just was like, yeah, that's fine. If you want to go to church with your friends, they're just basically teaching the difference between right and wrong. Yeah. And, but underneath it all, he had a very, very strong disdain for all organized religion. And, talked about opium of the masses. And so it was like all these mixed messages. And then, so growing up, and there was no absolute, there was some God talk, but there was nothing consistent. So I just, I grew up and I really believed in the hard sciences and just thought, okay, we're just going to reject God altogether. And until that I think it was the third voluntary meeting I went to, and the meeting didn't make sense. I couldn't understand. I was getting really triggered how everybody was talking about drinking. And then at the end of the meeting, they said the Lord's Prayer. And I had this explosive experience with it, where for the first time, this idea of give me my daily bread. Yeah. Forgive me my trespasses. Like I had this really powerful and intimate experience with the prayer. And so for whatever reason, the Lord's Prayer is the only one that doesn't annoy me. And it's the only one I've been able to memorize. And the rest of it, I love our fellow here who shared about like being the prayer. Because I get triggered if there's too much like God. I use the word God because it's efficient, right? Like ultimately it is, yeah, it's efficient and it helps me play nice with others in the sandbox. And but if people are too, if that fundamentalism vein comes through, it gets a little strange. But I've also experienced that with Buddhism. I've been on silent retreats where it was like some quote unquote Buddhists were, I'm not even going to talk about it because I know we've all experienced it in various faiths, but they can be strange too and very dogmatic and really so but yeah, I'm just so grateful that we have this group, and I'm super grateful to Gabriella because she's the wise one of our pair. And, and I'm grateful that she brought me here. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Julia. Nice to hear from you. And Gabriella, that puts you right in the next one in line to speak.
Oh, geez, I've been called out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia.
You got to live up to that now.
I know we got sober not too far apart from each other, and have known each other both of our long sobriety. As long as we have, not long but long, and this topic is a really big one for me, because when I first came into the 12-step rooms, I came from a very religious background. My mom's Christian Science, which doesn't believe in God. Doesn't believe in doctors, doesn't believe in seeking medical, treatments. There was a lot of ripe with denial about my father's drinking, about the violence, sexual abuse, all of that stuff, right? So for me, religion was Lord's prayers, the word God, very, very, very reactive to that. And when I first came into the rooms, I needed to get sober so bad. And that was like over 20 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 25 years ago. And everybody held hands afterwards. And maybe it was an OA meeting, because I was bulimic many years ago as well. And everybody held hands and had said the Lord's Prayer. And I could not get out of there fast enough. The visceral reaction that happened in me, this was not a safe place. That's what I learned, right? Anything that had to do with God or the word meant to me, it's not a safe place, because that was my experience. I had so many unsafe experiences and unhealthy experiences in the realm of religion. And even now, which is really funny, is that, the 3rd-step prayer, visceral reaction, full visceral reaction. And so, I'm reading your book when I was newly sober changed everything for me. And I'm just so excited that you have these meetings, and I found them, not too long ago. And then I was able to, to come back years later and get sober, and find a way to sit through the discomfort of the visceral reactions and keep going anyway, right? Yeah. And now, when those things happen, when people do the Lord's Prayer, the 3rd-step prayer, I do a loving kindness meditation, to myself or to others. And it really helps with me sit and be present and not be aversive, but also not feel, I don't think I'm being aversive, because I don't have the cringe, but I feel like I'm doing something that's supporting me in that way. And one of the other things that was really cool is I had to speak at a agnostic atheist OA meeting last week, and they put up some information about 12 steps, different literature about the 12 steps that weren't OA. They weren't the big book, and they weren't the 12 and 12, but it was like another way to work the steps. And I was able to bring your book in and talk about that. And it was really cool how many people were open to that, because I think it was that platform. Right. And I was able to tell them also how you had said something about my topic, which was so cool, because it had to do with one of the talks that you had discussed a couple of weeks ago about having a universal translator. Because in this meeting, I was supposed to pick a topic, talk about it for 10 minutes, and then do a role play with somebody that's supposed to be my sponsee. And then they went into breakout rooms. And like, what better topic than being able to translate the literature if you're an agnostic or an atheist or whatever you are. And it was just, I want to thank you for that. And these days, for me, where I really, as some other people talked about it, where I really saw my craving come up was not only in giving up alcohol, but in giving up cigarettes. Yeah. Cigarettes was a big one for me, because I would answer the phone every time my sponsee called and go smoke. And then when I stopped, the phone would ring, and I had this physical reaction. Pavlov's dog, right? Had to smoke, wanted to smoke so bad. And then it happened again when I gave up sugar and flour as well. So yeah, very interesting. And every now and then I still get cravings, you know, 13 plus years in, I don't get cravings for alcohol, but you know, I do still get cravings for wanting to check out with food, or wanting to take the edge off with another substance. And so it, you know,
of course,
it's just a path, and I'm just super grateful.
You know, that I've read that it's harder to quit cigarettes than it is to quit heroin. And I think part of that, I don't think it's as much the physical, although that's part of it, but I think a lot of it is, it's just so integrated into your life. You know, with drugs and alcohol, it's like there are very specific times you do that, and, you know, usually, unless you're just really gone. But with cigarettes, like you say, it's just so integrated into all these activities that it gets really hard. I was fortunate that I quit smoking in this very gradual method that I just invented when I was 20, because I had chronic bronchitis and I couldn't keep going. And I gradually cut back, where I decided I'll just smoke when I really need to smoke. And it turned out when I really needed to smoke was in the evening when I was drinking. And so I wouldn't smoke all day because I'd be working or busy, you know, so I could kind of avoid it. And then I would have and when I would have the first cigarette, after several months, I mean, this was like 9 months to do this. After several months of doing that, the first cigarette would make me sick. So I have eventually just developed an aversion to it. So I broke the addiction, and I broke the craving with the aversive experience of it. It like, I'd smoke it, it'd be like, oh, I'm getting dizzy, I feel terrible, I don't want to smoke anymore. I was lucky with that. The other thing I wanted to say is that, in a way, for me, all those prayers, because I don't care for the AA prayers, the 3rd and the 7-step prayers personally, but like you, when I'm doing them, it just automatically becomes metta. You know, it's like, may I, whatever, you know, like, Lord, love, you know, everything is just love. It's like I'm holding people's hands. We're holding each other's hands in a circle, saying words. What could we be talking about other than love? Obviously, we're talking about love. That might not be the specific language you're using, but what we clearly mean is love. And so I just feel that. I feel like, oh, I'm connected with these people. And, you know, and it's not even like a meta phrases. It's just a meta feeling that I go to very naturally. So you actually reminded me of that. So thank you.
It's I forgot about the 7-step prayer, that one too. Oof,
yeah,
you know, and as Julia was saying, you know, I've had an experience, which I dragged her to this meditation group here, which was the Against the Stream group. And we, you know, both of us had, and I had such a difficult time there. It was such an unhealthy place if you were a woman. And I actually did a grievance, you know, made a grievance. And this is before the whole thing exploded. So there was a precedent before the whole thing exploded. And it was, you know, I made a formal grievance around a teacher that was in teacher training that went all the way up to Spirit Rock. And you know, 3 or 4 years later, then it exploded. So yeah, I mean, we're all human, and humans are fallible and funky, right?
Yeah, especially human men.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this amazing group, and for I heard, and I'm very attached to the fact that you said you're going to keep doing Zoom. So I have some awareness around that.
Well, it's not a formal promise, it's an intention. But I imagine that, you know, yeah. And the thing is, as we get people like Debbie and Walt and Anne who can step in, then if I start traveling and teaching more, then we'll have a team, which is much more healthy in a way than having, you know, the guru. Nothing worse than a guru.
Yeah, and Debbie was just lovely last week. It was a really lovely Dharma talk and meditation. Thank you for that, Debbie.
I appreciate hearing that, and I have a lot of faith in her and trust in her. That's, yeah, absolutely. Okay, Abigail, you're going to get the last word, although probably I'll actually have the last word, but you know.
Thank you, Kevin. Welcome back. I'll just say very briefly, there's so much that I want to say, but I won't. I have to say that when she was talking about the cravings, I remember the first time I got sober, I had screaming cravings. And that was my response. When the craving came up, I just started to scream.
Oh.
And so I was...
I can well imagine that, actually. I can see you doing that, Abigail. Knowing you as anyway, I do.
What I wanted to share is that I have we don't say the Lord's Prayer here in Eugene, no. For which I'm tremendously grateful, but we say the Serenity Prayer twice, once at the beginning and once at the end. Yeah. And I just started a few months ago saying, instead of saying God, I just say, may I have the serenity, which is the meta phrase, right? Yeah. And nobody hears it except that I was leading, not leading, but it's a small group of step study, and we take turns starting it off. And I was the one who started off. So when it came time to say the Serenity Prayer, what I usually do is I hand it to somebody else. But this time I didn't. I just, without thinking much, I said, may I, instead of God. And there was dead silence ensued because nobody knew what to do.
It's a completely different phrasing. May I have the serenity to, and it's very confusing. I try to do it, but it actually just throws me off. So I just say God.
Yeah, it's become automatic to me now. So I'm good with that. It's automatic, but I will not do it when I am trying to lead people again.
I just think of God as like open-hearted, spacious. The phrase that I came up with that I led the meditation, loving kindness meditation the other day, and I've just written it down because I'm going to work on this, is a field of loving energy. Mm. So when I say God, I kind of I don't think of it. I feel it as a field of loving energy. God, and it's like something sweeps over me. Loving energy, and because it's just all about like redefining the language and not